So welcome back, everyone. Those who have been able to join us last term, as well as those who haven't been, but still you have joined this class now. Even though in formal situation, this kind of textbook is studied from beginning till the end together. We are not expecting anyone to have such a time, but those who have, of course, you're very welcome. But those who are joining as the class for the first time, we are currently looking at a very famous classical Buddhist text called Entry to the Middle Way. Entry to the Middle Way first means middle way is the way of the Buddha when he taught what he realized through enlightenment. He found that people were finding or adopting various spiritual paths, but they were falling into extremes, or either in eternalism, or the believing in a kind of a godly state that is saved by some superior being out there, or those who are very skeptics who didn't believe in anything, nihilist. So the world was caught in this duality of eternalist and nihilist. And Buddha himself, as an Indian prince, was brought up in the theistic religious, monotheistic Indian religious culture. And so he questioned the validity of them. And then later on he realized the idea of creation by Supreme Being doesn't gel well. So he just went in search of what the purpose of meaning of his own life, and through his long spiritual journey, he later on, through years of strict meditation and self-discipline, prayer, and with a very altruistic intention to find a wisdom for the benefit of all, he attained enlightenment. So his enlightenment is called Mahabodhi, or Great Enlightenment. It's not kind of a transcendental, reaching certain meditative absorption, which many people mistakenly think that's enlightenment. Some of his teachers were in that state, and that's all they could teach. And they will actually enter into some dhyanic, some meditative absorption of extreme bliss and freedom from all worldly problems. And such meditative power did exist and still does exist. But they have their own limited benefit. They are not actual enlightenment. They're just some meditative absorption, so cessation of some temporal gross desire and ill will and so on. But that state of suspension of certain meditative state does look like eternally perfect. According to Buddha's realization, many beings called gods, many of them dwell in that state. But in Buddhism, they call transient God realm. They are not eternal heaven. There is no eternal state that if it's permanent, you can reach. So therefore, he realized that his teaching that he practiced through, and then he attained enlightenment, was later on coined as a Madhyamika, or the middle way. So middle way means to avoid extremes of nihilism, those skeptics who don't believe in anything, and other is eternalism. So they're either materialists who believe in only happiness coming from material possessions or grasping, or those who believe in eternal God who saves us. So these two, eternalists and nihilists, were the two views that were wrong, that were mistaken. The majority of people were wrong, and they have no one to tell them that. Buddha, through his enlightenment, he gained the realization, be it conduct, or be it meditation, or be it wisdom, all of these three has to be middle way. Even you observe very strict discipline like asceticism, which Buddha himself did for the good number of the years meditation. Later on, he was emaciated. He nearly died of asceticism. He realized that's going too far. So therefore, he taught his disciples not to go extreme asceticism. Nor he advocated extreme kind of indulgence in the pleasure. So he taught the middle way. And so behavior was middle way. And then the meditation is also middle way in terms of union of calm abiding, especially inside meditation. And the view is also middle way. Middle way meaning middle way meaning a dependent origination. So this text by Chandrakirti, who's regarded as a about 6th century Indian scholar, one of the luminaries of many Indian scholars who have taught and written commentaries on. He is writing this text as an introduction for people to understand writings of Nagarjuna. The Nagarjuna wrote a fundamental text called Mulya Madhyamika, means root, the fundamental middle way, which is very long text and also quite profound and deep. I wouldn't say complicated. It's profound and deep, and so Nagarjuna later on saw many other people writing commentaries on it, and therefore he wrote this as a gradual way of training people to learn the middle way. So his text has 10 chapters. Each of these chapters are named after bodhicitta. Bodhicitta means altruism. So you have to. These are really development of a practitioner who fathoms intellectually and with the meditation they have realized the bodhicitta, different levels of bodhicitta. There are different levels of bodhicitta from the beginner to the advanced. So here, what this bodhicitta we're talking about is the level of the advanced bodhisattvas who have reached the 6th bhumi, because we're talking about the 6th chapter. The 6th chapter is called approaching because one is approaching to the glimpse, to the eve of realizing the actual emptiness. So it's basically in the first part of this 6th chapter we have covered is going about negating the self-production and other production. Self-production meaning things are not produced independently by itself. Yeah. So things are produced independently, but there are schools of thought in India that things were produced by themselves. And therefore denying any other causes and condition. So such views need to be taken care. And also other production, meaning things are created by others. So people usually do that in the materialism or whatever they're going through, they think it's the wrongdoing of other people. They point finger at others and other production. So both these two need to be refuted first. So here, where we are at right now, we are right now talking about. So on page, we're actually on page 183. Here, Chandrakirti is specifically addressing the inter-Buddhist school. Inter-Buddhist school, there's a school called Yogacara, which is mind-only school, which talks about the existence of alaya vijnana, which is store consciousness. And there's a lot of reason for that. And here he's explaining what that it is. And so on page 143, we begin with the verse number 183. I usually read the verse in Tibetan because it helps me, even though there are translation and commentary here we go through. Milam mikpe yuda tonene sekyang lula chakpa ke gyurwa deshin gashin rangshin yu mikpe lele kyanen yu mayis. So here, as the translation says, a fool, when waking from his dream, remains attached to things he dreamt about. In such a way, from finished acts, that are without any reality, resultant fruits will also manifest. So this is an example example showing the meaning of the previous verse is shown by the example given in the verse. Some foolish people, even after awakening from the dreams, remain attached to the object they have seen in dream. So when they have woken up from the dream, sleep, and the thing is no longer there, but still they are talking about it, attached to it. So this means we also, even though whatever happens is no less than a dream, but still we are not over it, yeah? We are still attached to those experiences, post-traumatic stress disorder or post-enjoyment attachment disorder, post-attachment attachment disorder. The thing is not there, but still attached to it. They just still think they must have that, and they suffer the loss, but they're still not better with what they had, but they're worse because they're attached to it. This means that although there is no truth in what you have seen in the dream it was already a dream, but we didn't know it was a dream. But if after waking up from the dream, at least one should know it was just a dream, So it will still cause the production of some knowledge or awareness that in this case is attachment. So one is still attached to something what one hasn't. During the time one had it, maybe it was acceptable because during that that's all you can see. But when one wakes up, there's no trace of it. Still one is holding on to that. That is, in this case, attachment. In the same way, even after performance, an action that has ceased and has no inherent existence that can still produce a result, like someone has said something or did something to you, like a dream. Now, after that activity is over, they're not hitting you again. That oneself is keep hitting by mentally speaking. So therefore, one is almost role playing oneself. There are many things that, even in the worldly sense, are not to be truly existing. People will say it's a dream, it's over, it's not happening. Still, there's the possibility of the result. In the same way, karma may have disaggregated, but still leads to different results. So the result is produced by the attachment, not by the event. If one woke up from the sleep, then one will not have the attachment because it's not there anymore. So this verse is the two extremes. Extreme faults are rejected here. The first is the fault unending fruition is rejected because the thing has already come to an end. Why people has post-traumatic stress disorder? Because they think it is still harming them. They still are developing anger, developing nightmare, developing enmity, because they're harmed by that. That unending problem is caused by that, not the event itself. But yet people think it's to do with the object. And that's how the suffering is snowballed, by oneself doing it many times. So therefore, it looks like so here we are talking about fault of unending fruition rejected. So there is an end to the fruition. The fruit is produced, and then after that there is no production of another fruit. So what is producing another fruit? By the bad thought about it. Yet the one thing is the object or the event is producing it. Yeah? One's bad thought about it is producing. So it's not the endless result of the previous one. It is a new cause one is creating and is producing this. So that's what it's talking about. First, the fault of unending fruition rejected in this next verse. Chidra yumi minsun kyang rabri chengi tashin number ne tongi ngoishin number mayimba teshimelam larmi min shekis. While non-existing objects are all equal in their unreality, so the things that doesn't exist, whether this or that, even though there are two things that doesn't exist, both are equally non-existing. Black lines are only seen by those who suffer from eye disease. So the hair lines or something are seen by people who have optical illusion, optical problem, yeah, or who have cataract or something. They can see, not because the thing exists, but they're non-existing. There are other non-existings, but he can't see them. That non-existing, he can see them because he has this particular eye problem, yeah? Now, that's an example, yeah? Likewise, while other non-existent things will not appear to such an invalid. Yeah, other things that he can't see, like a barren woman's child, like a rabbit's horn, also doesn't exist. But why can't he rabbit horn? Because it also doesn't exist. Yeah. So with the unique optical problem, he sees the hairlines. But without that optical problem, he wouldn't even see the hairlines because. So therefore, why doesn't he see rabbit horn? Because rabbit horn also doesn't exist. You know, so both are non-existing to the people like you and me. Yeah, yeah. But why does he sees one and not the other? And we just see neither of the two. So this is talking about the projection of the mind. You know, it is thus that we should understand that ripened acts do not again bear fruit. You know, if you had the harm caused by someone's pushing or yelling or whatever, the result has already produced. It's not ceaseless producing again. If ceaseless non-existing is seeing, it's because you have an optical illusion in the mind. When you have a mental anger, then it keep appearing. Like the optical illusion person sees non-existing things. Like a person who has anger or resentment, and they keep seeing. They have paranoia that somebody's harming them, even though they're nobody. Wherever they go, they see. I keep meeting this kind of people, they say. Because they're always taking that kind of hostility and fear and that. So they're seeing. Let's read through the commentary. This responds to an argument presented by the other school. According to this argument, since Madhumita, the middle way school, says that there is no problem with having a result even after a cause that happened a long time ago, because the karma has not ceased inherently, then isn't it possible for a karma that has already given a result to give another result? So this is question, you know. Post-traumatic disorder people think like that. They think that they're suffering still because of that. You know, they don't realize that stopped producing the result, and then subsequently oneself has been creating causes by oneself. So, after all, the karma that has already given a result has also not disintegrated inherently. So why will it be? It not yield its effect again? If this so, the result will be unending. This is the fault of unending fruition. This is the kind of counter argument by other school. And this is rejected. This argument is rejected by Chandrakirti, who says, using an example of floating hairlines, black lines, and rabbit horn are equal in the sense that both are non-existing, and as long as something is non-existing, we cannot differentiate it from the other non-existent things. If they're equally non-existent, how come the person with this eye illness or unclear eye sight sees only the hairlines, not the rabbit's horn? If he sees something there that does not exist, then why doesn't he see all the things that do not exist? Yeah? There. Why not the rabbit's horn or a child of a barren woman? Even though they are equally non-existing, these things are not seen by him. The answer is the unclear sight is a cause that produced only the hairlines. Yeah? So hairline is only produced to be visible to the person who has a particular optical problem. Yeah, neither the ripe in action nor the unripe one has disintegrated inherently. Yet there is still a difference in the sense that the effect will ripen only from karma that has not already come into fruition. So one which has ripened will not ripen again, because the ability of that karma to ripen has already come to an end. It is not a matter of whether the karma itself has disintegrated inherently, but the ability to ripen has been exhausted. Karma has not been ceased inherently, but it will yield no further effects. So this completes the fault of unending fruition. This is a rejection of endless suffering caused by whatever happened 10 years ago. So there is no justification that caused by that. Of course, that produces a particular effect. But after that, the attitude towards that effect is producing. But that cause has stopped. How could it produce a result? So therefore, the unceasing, the endless effect, what appears to be endless effect since then, all these years, has been a counterproduct of an attitude that one developed towards it. So that itself is causing. So it's not caused by the result, cause that has completely finished producing the result. So like say, if I cultivate say corn, we pour the seed in the farming, and then seed produce the corn. Yeah, corn we harvest it. And now we can't say the next year's harvest come from that kind of this year's farming, because then you don't have to farm at all. It will keep growing, keep cultivating every year. It's not like that. You have to still go and sow the seed. So the next year's harvest comes from this year's harvesting, not previous year's harvesting. So therefore, most people have a wrong view. Oh, my suffering was caused by that happened 10 years ago and it's still affecting me. They don't realize that cause that produces result has come to an end. And since then, any attitudes, because they don't know there's thought karma. Their thought about it, towards it, which is anger or whatever, is producing results, which is maybe heavier than the result that was produced by previously. So resentment hurts person more suffering than the actual event that happened. So therefore, we have to enter the middle way. Middle way means we are otherwise falling into the extremes. Extremes of blaming somebody without thinking they got any karmic condition, causes, effect from that. One has to take responsibility of one's attitude. One doesn't know that one's attitude has been snowballing all this result, and therefore one is falling extremes. One is suffering not from the wrongdoing of the what happened 10 years ago, but subsequent wrong view about it. The subsequent wrong view about is actually harming oneself again repeatedly, and then they still blame somebody else, and that's how they fall in the extremes of eternalism, saying they are the complete cause of my suffering, and they think that's the only thing that's caused. Yet their suffering is never going away. Even the person died. Person disappeared, he's not doing any of that, still the suffering is not stopping. Why? The cause is still created by oneself. So that's extreme view, philosophically, behaviorally speaking. Person is actually suffering by falling into the wrong view of not knowing the workings of law of causality. So that's why this has to be rejected. It says this is rejection of unending result. Unending result. Unending result doesn't produce from one cause. Everything cause one, then it stops producing result. And to produce the harvest next year, you have to do it again next year. And even then, there's no guarantee you will produce a result. So that shows even the fit causes condition that itself may not produce. If the other condition like rain and the weather condition not permitting, even you repeat all the causes, it still have no guarantee to produce result. So therefore, it's a wrong view to think that one cause is producing endless result for so long time, which a lot of people still say they are wrongly done by other people. They think it's wrongdoing of other people. My life has been destroyed. And as a result of that, they're suffering. They're falling in the extreme wrong view of that. People more, they say, Nawe Miching Shenpe Ching in Tibetan, saying, you're not bound by the appearance. You're bound by the wrong view about it. So one's wrong view about it is punishing us more than the actual thing we saw. Yeah, this is a very meditative expression. So now the purpose of what Chandrakirti is writing is how to help people to enter the safe way, middle way, not falling into extreme eternalism or nihilism, saying I have nothing to do with it. I have nothing to do with it. The denial, that's a nihilism. taking no responsibility of their attitude, their resentment, their poor me mentality at all, and totally blaming to the other as eternalism. So that's the two extremes, eternalism, nihilism. Middle way is no. There is no truly existing, constantly endlessly causing result from a cause. It is interdependently produced. So, second is the fault of indefinite or uncertain fruition. Uncertain fruition. Indefinite or uncertain, because everything has a certain result. So there is no uncertain result. So that uncertain result is rejected by next verse. It says, "Techer nami mege nakbole nami geni gele yin tong xing gemi lojen tar yude lende namla sembanga says, while evil acts are seen to be source of baneful fruits, means negative fruits, and good results are seen come from virtuous seeds. So these are just cause and effect. Bad deeds produce bad results, good deeds produce good results. The wise, for whom there's no good or evil, are free. Because that's the middle way, is not good or bad extremes. They see the good and bad only relatives. Only relatives. Not inherently good, not inherently bad from its own side. So the middle way is one who sees neither good nor bad by itself. It's only relative. And we are warned against investigation of the karmic process. Here, whereas it can be seen that negative action mature in unwholesome effects, while wholesome effects mature from virtuous action. One who cognizes the non-intrinsic existence of what is wholesome and unwholesome will be liberated. Still, because ordinary people cannot comprehend the specific relationship between action and their result, Buddha placed limits on thinking about specific actions and their results. This shows the fault of indefinite fruition is rejected. Again, same thing could be argued. If it is the matter of karma not disintegrating inherently, then it is possible that a virtuous action can also give result of suffering, and non-virtuous action can give a positive result. Both actions are equal in that they have no disintegrated disintegrated inherently, and each karma has the ability to produce specific result, be it negative or positive. The ripening factor of the non-virtuous action will be the negative result, and virtuous action will lead to the positive result. That is certain. So there's talking about certainty of negative cause producing negative result, and positive cause producing positive result. There shouldn't be any confusion. It is not the case that because there is no true existence of karma or true existence result, anything can ripen. Yeah. So there is a different law. People say that if everything is emptiness, how could there be certainty that this will produce this result, that will produce that result? So that way of dismissing karma is nihilism. Middle way is not a rejection of law of cause and effect. So it's not uncertainty. There definitely is a certainty. Another argument presented by those schools who do not believe in emptiness, because those who believe in emptiness, meaning empty of inherent existence. So those who do not believe, they believe in eternalism and nihilism. Is that if you believe in emptiness, you will lose the law of cause and effect. So that's one danger of people who think they understand emptiness. They think therefore there's no law of cause and effect. So thinking the karma should not be regarded or should not be taken great care in a conventional world. Of course, we should, but so one shouldn't fall into the other extremes of nihilism by saying emptiness doesn't mean there is no law of cause, because the law of cause and effect has no validity if you accept the phenomena as empty. That's their argument. They don't realize law of cause and effect is a relative teaching, and emptiness is ultimate teaching. So. This argument is rejected because karma and result accept only in a worldly sense. Yeah, Buddha only talks about law of karma in a relative worldly sense. The ultimate truth, everything lacks inherent existence. in ultimate truth, everything lacks inherent existence. Not only law of cause and effect, but who experience is not there. Karma, except only in the context of relative and conventional truth. In Vajrayana, we are asked to observe pledges and commitment. Otherwise, we may not get desired result, may even fall into lower realms. In the case of practitioner who has gone through that already and has reached a certain stage of attainment, there is no need to observe these pledges and commitments. The practitioner who is known as a yogi can perform any kind of action. So this is talking about different levels. For the kindergarten student and for middle school or for high school children, they have a different things. For the kindergarten school, what they should or shouldn't do is one thing, but the middle school has another should and shouldn't. They're both relative. Of course, ultimately, it doesn't really matter if you have done all the both schools. Then by the time you finish middle school, kindergartens, everything, all of them don't relevant anymore. Now you're beyond that. So the relative level, so confusion may arise, however, when an ordinary practitioner also wishes to practice in this way. So ordinary people shouldn't compare themselves with the advanced, realized practitioners. He may see that a certain advanced practitioner is behaving in a certain way and ask why he should not behave in the same way. This is why, and that is why when it comes to secrecy of Vajrayana teachers, some teachers are strict, whereas others are not. Some students ask their teachers why they are so strict when other high lamas so comparatively lenient. Teacher may explain the pledges and commitment are individual. I know where I am in accordance with my level. I have to maintain secrecy. Other teachers are on other levels. They are not all the same. Now, when we are at a certain level, as will be explained later, nominal and conventional truth is used as a means for the realization of ultimate truth. When you realize ultimate truth, at that time there's no karma and effect. You can even say that you don't believe in karma and effect because from your point of view, it has served its purpose. Law of karma is within the realm of conventional truth, and it is used merely as a method. This shows that there is no inherent existence. Even karma has no inherent existence. But relatively, people who are affected by past cause, and the effect is hitting them a big brunt, they cannot deny the effect the certain cause has. So they must learn to avoid certain causes being created. So this is talking about the different levels of practitioner. This is what the ancient Chinese master, ancient Tibet said. This is the Chinese Mohoyan monk who advocated the Southern school, Southern Zen school. And he said you don't need to worry about karma. So he's talking about that. If you do positive action, you will get positive result, but only in samsara. In the same way, if you commit negative, you will get negative results. Either way, you will end up in samsara. So that's his argument, That's his argument. So the best thing is not to perform any action at all. Not to perform any action also. That's correct after one has reached a certain level, but it's not correct for ordinary practitioners. So he argued that. He argued that so you don't need to meditate at all. You don't meditate. And then his Indian counterpart says, so do you have to think not to meditate? He says, yes. See, you have to do something. So to think I will not meditate is also something you have to say. So you have to, if you think I will not meditate, is also doing. So what's the difference? So still you have to do something. So the result doesn't come from not doing anything. So they're both equal, basically equal, So the example, one example given is that if you call somebody a thief, knowing that the person has stolen, another person may by chance call somebody a thief without knowing it is true. This is the difference. There is a difference, even though the result has come to the same thing. The same sort of process can be used, but on a higher level when there's no need to perform action. Now we need to, because we need to accumulate merit. If it were just as easy as not doing anything, anybody would be get liberated. Yeah, there would be no need for all this method practice. This is why the intention of Chinese monk was rejected. Later, when you perform the necessary action and accumulate merit, you reach the stage where you understand that everything is empty of true existence. At that time, you will realize there's no existence of either virtuous action or non-virtuous action, an ultimate level. That you will be liberated. But as an ordinary being, subject to the law of cause and effect, it's better that you don't investigate too deeply. That was the Buddha's instruction. When you don't know the exact relationship between specific karma and their result, it is useless to speculate about it. It is also useless to look into the scientific answer. Science is restricted to a limited scale of knowledge of knowable object. When the level of your mind is limited, it is just as a waste of time to reach a higher state. In Tibet, they used to they used the example of trying to jump like a monkey. If you are not physically as fit as monkey, you can't jump as far as monkey does. In the same way, if your mind is distracted, it is useless to say that those two actions are similar. You can't come to any conclusion without having a clear knowledge of law of cause and effect. That is why ordinary beings are advised not to think along those lines. We are advised just to believe in the law of cause and effect. These are reasons given in the scriptures, but until we attain a certain stage, we are not encouraged to study detailed application of the law. So, in essence, that verse is rejecting the uncertain result. There will be certain results. So, saying there will be no certain result is rejecting the law of cause and effect. So that's because the people think if there's emptiness, there's no cause and effect. So why would talk about emptiness if there's cause and have to be careful with what produces result? So it's not an uncertain result produced by certain causes. That's why we have to plant rice to grow rice. Otherwise, you can just throw whatever, maybe throw some pebble and expect to grow some rice. No, you have to create the correct cause for the whatever effect you wish to. So emptiness is not disregarding conventional law of cause and effect. So that's a wrong view, nihilist view. Yeah. So emptiness is not a nihilist; it's a rather a dependent origination view. So that's a very important in a point. Now, next one is benefits of having having reject. Sorry. Now we have rejected the section outlining the dealing with the benefits of having a karmic effect. So the person who understands the middle way shouldn't be rejecting the conventional law of causality. That's what it is, yeah? That's what it is. If you do reject, then it's nihilism, yeah? If this nihilism. But if you say, the karma is karma, I can't do nothing, then it's eternalism. Then think that you can't do nothing. So therefore we should not fall into either nihilism or eternalism, but we should give due consideration of the benefit of a cause and effect. The benefits of having a karmic effect. This has three divisions. First is karma and effect will not be exhausted even without universal mind or store consciousness. Now this is the Madhyami mind-only school. So one of the main theory is the store consciousness, the eight consciousness. Out of eight consciousness, the store consciousness. And there's an interesting point coming. Second is true extreme faults are rejected above that. Third is teaching on universal mind, sometimes called alaya vijnana. Alaya vijnana is translated here universal mind or store consciousness, because it's the base of all consciousness. So now are described as interpretive and definitive. All mind-only school theories, which it talks about the three nature, are only interpretive. It's not definitive. Interpretive meaning conventional. We have already discussed the first two. Now we will move into third, teaching on the universal mind, universal meaning, alaya means store, conscious store of basis of all, or store consciousness. That is interpretive. This has two verses. The first is talking about kunji yujin kansa niyola pungbon de dang bashi niyoje temban din tedra chosabdan rigbe rigboramin yu kanye telawos. Now that the universal ground, this is called alaya. Can you say alaya? Alaya. Alaya, the Sanskrit word. Alaya means like word Himalaya. The Himalaya is made out of him and alaya. Alaya means abode. So him means snow. Snow abode. Snow abode. Alaya means all abode. All abode. Abode of all. So basis of all. Store consciousness. Here they translate the word, universal. Universal mind, but actually is translated as a store consciousness. Some people just keep the word alaya vijnana. Vijnana means consciousness. Alaya means abode or basis of all. So this is very important. So when it says the universal ground, that person exists. So universal ground is the eighth consciousness, not just six consciousness, but there are eight consciousnesses. Of the eight consciousness, universal ground is the fundamental store or base that supports all the other seven consciousness. So that the universal ground, that person exists. That skandhas are only existing things. All these are teachings given for those who cannot understand the deepest meaning. So now the question arises: what is the universal ground, alaya, as well as the relationship with the person and aggregates? Yeah, the skandhas, meaning aggregates, are existing things. So let's go through the commentary. The issue of interpretive meaning compared with the definitive meaning is being raised at this point because we have just been discussing store consciousness, the alaya, vijnana. Now the question arises: if Chandrakirti negates store consciousness, Chandrakirti is the author. If he says there is no store consciousness as a medium to join the karma and effect, does this mean Chandrakirti negates alaya vijnana? Because is it not the case that alaya vijnana or store consciousness is taught by the Buddha in different scriptures? So they say, didn't the Buddha teach about the store consciousness? Chandrakirti tried to refute that. If he refutes that, then does that not go against it? The immediate response from the other school is that the unreasonable to negate existence store consciousness, because for the mind-only school, for them, store consciousness is a very important base to talk about storage of all our memories from last life to next. The karma is stored onto that. That's a store consciousness. Because in other scriptures, it is clearly referred to by Buddha. Buddha talks about store consciousness. So therefore, now the question arises, what is the role of the store consciousness? As I mentioned earlier, one sutra says that there are 8 consciousness. And that includes this one, alaya vijnana. Alaya vijnana means store of consciousness that store all the other 7 consciousness. What are the other 7 consciousnesses? The 6 sense consciousnesses, from visual to the mental. Yeah, we know that. And the 7th one is deluded consciousness. Deluded consciousness. So alaya vijnana does not get better or improved or worsened by either of these 7 consciousness on it. It is not something. That's the kind of the base of consciousness that cannot be ruined, that cannot be improved, that doesn't need to be improved, that doesn't become depleted, even by deluded consciousness on it. So, Hindus may call that Brahma. They call pure one. Brahma means pure one, pure one. That's they will call that Brahma, but in the Mahayana Buddhist language they call alaya vijnana. Alaya vijnana. Mahayana accept the existence of these 8 consciousnesses. This is one support in favor of establishing existence of store consciousness. Or another argument goes this way: just as the waves arise from the ocean, all the graspings and the grasp arise out of store consciousness. This store consciousness is clearly mentioned in the sutras. Is this contradictory? Now the question arises, is this contradictory? In this analysis, it is said that there are teachings which show that store consciousness exists, and that there are those that mention existence of a person or a self or only aggregates, So when we talk about person, aggregates, name, these things are gross, These things are gross things. In the later case, it is sometimes explained that although self may not exist, aggregate alone exist. So Buddha talked about the aggregates in order to deny the existence of permanent self. By the time you take the aggregate form, feeling, perception, volition, and the consciousness, in this case the 6 consciousness, then what does it leave? This leaves nothing. So here, now it goes to explain in relation to that. In the later case, it is sometimes explained that although self may not exist, aggregate alone may exist. And now this is very important. Next verse. Jiktsok tatang trayang sangyeki chitrang ngatang ngayi tempatar teshingun ranshi memeki yuji changdoni do tempayins. The Buddha, free of thinking that aggregate composed of a self, Buddha never thinks the aggregate, meaning body. Why is body an aggregate? If you realize the word body, the body suggests composite, isn't it? Body is composite of many things, composites of many things. So itself doesn't exist, Like brick is not a brick; it's a composite of rammed earth. And when rammed earth is fire, we call brick. Otherwise, it's just a handful of dust. So our body is rammed flesh, fluid and so. So Buddha, free of thinking, the Buddha does not think the body is self because he doesn't see the aggregate composed of self. Did yet say I and spoke of my teachings. Buddha said I and my teachings, just for the sake of explaining I and Buddha, these are my teachings. In such a way, though things are certainly without inherent being, he taught expediently and said that they exist. So this is the interpretive meaning, At the first 2 truths, Buddha said there is suffering, there's origin of suffering. He almost warned the origin of suffering. He said, you can do better without the suffering. Can't you stop the cause? It's all there, can't you see it? He told them there was things. There was suffering whose self. There was a suffering that has a cause. There was a cause that has to be stopped. He said those things exist. So that's expedient method of telling, first of all, there are the relative conventional problems. So this is the verse talking how Buddha is skillfully teaching. For beginners, he can't say that there's nothing. So therefore he said there is something that's called suffering, there's a cause and effect and so on. And the fact that all these scriptures should be considered as interpretive. Buddhist teaching has always 2, interpretive meaning and definitive meaning. So interpretive meaning should not be, they say, should not be treated as a definitive meaning. There is a definitive meaning. During the interpretive meaning, people should first understand interpretive meaning. Then from the interpretive meaning, then one may know the definitive meaning. For instance, says, they were given to those disciples who could not apprehend profound meaning at that moment. He didn't say everything's empty at the very beginning. In order to lead them to that state there where they would be able to understand profound meaning, teaching on store conscious self are given. there is store consciousness. There are 5 aggregates. It's very specific. 5 of them, not just one. 5 of them. Oh, that's interesting. People realize there are a lot more than one self. So that confuses them. So to tell them there's no one self, he says there are 5. Did you notice that? Two, we think is dangerous in a split personality. Buddha said there's 5. If you really want to think there's a self, there's a 5. How about all those 5? Are they not you? So very, very skillful. Skillful to teach there is no one. Tell there's a 5. And then by the time people start looking in the form, they don't find self in there. And then can't find in either of the 5. And then how he skillfully teaches them there's nothing. It's like the story about, they say, if the house is burning in fire, if the children did not know the house is on fire and playing with a lot of toys in the house because they were in the middle of enjoying the toy, how do you save the children from the fire? Don't tell them house is burning in fire. Because they don't know where to go and they may just burn in fire. But tell them there are better toys outside the house. Then they will make sure how to get out of the house, and then they will not be burned in the fire. Like that, instead of telling there is no self for beginners, instead of telling them, they're saying there are these 5 aggregates. There are this kind of consciousness, store consciousness, 6 consciousness, and deluded consciousness. And then slowly, by teaching that, teach the lack of inherently existing self. So that's what the interpreter meaning is. Slowly interpreting, showing how to, spoon feeding, basically. Spoon feeding. Buddha is spoon feeding skillfully so that people do not find too hard to understand the emptiness later on, because they have already went through one by one all the 5. He taught this. These were given to disciples so they, in order to lead them to that state where they would be able to understand profound meaning, teaching, and so store conscious self are given. Even though the Buddha lacks a self-grasp, Buddha himself doesn't have any self-grasping, possessive self-grasping, such as my table, my book. That's why he abandoned all them. He renounced all of them. And Nagarjuna says he has no thesis. Saying I have no thesis is a thesis, I think. But yet he got away with that argument. Wrote a book, by the way. To say he hasn't written a book, he wrote a book. But and that's interpreted so that people also know not to become too grasping to the book. If you look at the page, there's no book. There's the paragraph, there's no book. Only when the collection of the papers, then there's a book, yes, and like that. So teach that. Buddha mentioned both self-grasping and possessive self. In other words, in certain scriptures, the Buddha manifested as though he had self-grasping. At times he stated, at such and such time I was born as a rabbit, or such and such time I was born as a king, demonstrating self-grasping, that he said that I was such and such who didn't realize self-grasp, emptiness of self, and was a rabbit, was a king, and so on. He called out Ananda, come and bring my robes. He didn't say bring no robes. So he acted as though that there was a self that needs a robe and asked to bring. So these are all interpreted meanings, of course. This verse mentions the view of transitory collection. This is a Buddhist terminology of aggregates. Body is called transient collection. And so that means feeling is also transient collection. Transient meaning impermanent. They are fleeting. They're fleeting. Your feelings are fleetingly changing and can change one way or another. And there's no fixed feeling that lasts. So therefore it's transient. And when you know that feelings are transient, you will not see them as truly existing, permanent existing, independently existing. So you can see you can undo a feeling, so can you undo a thought. When people suffer thought disorder, they don't know how to undo a thought. The more they think badly of a thought get lumped and then aggregated. Then looks like a solidly existing thing. So this is the teaching: how not to lump it, how not to create too many thoughts, how to de-lump it, basically. Yeah, this verse mentioned that view of the transient collection, that the aggregates compose of a self. This is identical to self-grasping. The term transient collection, transitory collection, in fact refers to the aggregates, the collection of those things that integrates, that disintegrates. Yeah, even as we sit here, we are disintegrating. At least a couple of answers. At least a couple of flakes. I notice whenever I take my socks off, there's so many things in the socks that wasn't in the morning. And you will also notice the bathroom. Your hair is dropping all over the place. You think you still permanently have the hair. That's just visible hair and flakes. But there are many other things. Your muscles are disintegrating. Your memory is disintegrating. Your stamina is disintegrating. All the feelings, perception, volition, energy, interest, capacity, all are disintegrating. So it's good to know that, because then you don't develop that it's real and permanent, and then we don't suffer the illusion. Suffer the illusion that is truly there. It is not there. The view of transitory collection refers to the view directed upon the aggregates. This is very important. We have imputed. This is the same as self-grasping. People say my body, my house. You did this to me. People say that. But if they ask, what's me? They're only pointing to the body or something else that's not them. So this will be explained more in detail later when we touch the view of selflessness of person. When a being grasps the self, he grasps the collection of aggregate as self. Yeah, he is grasping to the form, which means body. Body means composites. Composites. Like this book is composite of pages. There's no book in any of the pages. Particularly if not bound, they just loose papers. And when things are bound together, we call it book collectively. But actually, there is no book in the book. There are only pages. In the page, there are no pages. There's their own lines. So basically, everything is a aggregate bundle. Everything is hips. Everything is hip together. Everything hip together. Look at the carpet that you see. These are hundreds of. They usually have 100 knot per square inch. Per square inch, they're 100 knot. So it's many knots of yarn that actually makes the carpet. There is no real carpet in any of the knot. But many knots put together in a rammed place, then it has a woven together, looks like carpet. Likewise, there is no hair in the one hair. They don't say, I have hair, and keep one hair on the head. When they have locks of hair, they say, I have my hair. They don't never go to say, I have one hair and I need the hairdressing. Hairdressing for one hair. That's interesting, eh? Only when there's locks of hair, then they say hairdressing. So actually there is no really, in each of the hair, there is no hair. They're only hair strand. So when you split all the hairs, there is no hair. Likewise, if you split all the different aggregates in the body, there is no truly existing self that is in the body. Yet we perceive this is my body, this is my this, and then develop grasping to one who you like, aversion to another, and then we suffer. And then we think we lost something valuable that truly exists, that is completely one in its unitarily existing thing. We don't realize it's the potter's handful of dust. Potter has at first a handful of dust. Then he mixed it with the water and glue, and together he made a pot. Then he fired it, and then it became pot. But he thinks there's a truly existing one whole pot, but yet his pot is very breakable. As soon as the pot breaks, there's no pot. So likewise, we are all transient collection, and not only body but also things, also feelings. And when a being grasps the self, he grasps the collection of aggregate as the self. He mistakenly thinks that's self. There is no distinction as to whether the self and aggregate are same or separate. They don't never think like that. They just assume it's self. And when they're attached to some form, they think you hurt me because it hit on your fence or something. When you think it's your fence, it hurts you. When you think you're not your fence, it doesn't hurt you. So there's no really hurt if it wasn't about self-grasping. So our self-grasping is actually root cause of all the sufferings. Mistaken self-grasping. That is why another term is given for self-grasping, jigsaw la tawa, which means the view of the transitory collection. View of transitory collection as self. This view had been abandoned long beforehand. It was abandoned in the first bhumi. The person, bodhisattva who's on the first bhumi, already realized that. Therefore, there is no question of the Buddha having this. Yet he mentioned I and my. That is why these are considered to be interpreted. Buddha simply taught to spoon-feed sentient beings like us that how we grasp to the body mistakenly as me and true and permanent and real. And so in order to highlight that, Buddha, he mentioned I and my. That is why it is considered to be interpreted, used to lead beings to in accordance with the particular circumstances. Even though those things have no inherent existence, there is no mention of some scriptures in such things that such things do exist. But these references are considered as interpretive, yeah. This raises the question of distinction between interpretive meaning skillful. Skillfully teaching others, experience, to teach them definitive meaning later on. According to one interpretation, interpretive meaning concerns those teaching that includes things that are not accepted even on a conventional level. Even a thing is said to exist in a definitive way, then that thing exists in ultimate truth. If it is shown as to be interpretive, it is said not to exist even in a conventional truth. Another explanation is that if something is said to be interpretive, that does not mean that it does not exist even in a conventional truth. It means that it does not exist only in ultimate truth, although it may well exist in a conventional truth. The final thing we have to understand when addressing interpretive and definitive truth is that there is no difference in regard to the meaning of the definite truth. It's not the definite truth we are trying to split hair, but if we have to live firstly on a relative level. When we know something is interpretive, it's only relative. What is told to you is not told in the next to something taller than that. So that's look at relative truth. Yeah? So it's only tall when there's no it's when all things are shorter than it. But if something is taller than it becomes shorter now. So taller becomes shorter, So therefore previously tall now becomes short. Why? Not because it is itself tall or short, but it's relative to next to what it is. So that is very useful, interpretive meaning. That means there's no eternally something long by itself, tall by itself, or short by itself, only to relative to what. So if somebody says you're good or bad, even if somebody says bad, you're a bad person, you can say, yeah, relatively you must be correct. It's very good to say that. Oh, relatively you're correct. Means that you haven't seen better side of you. When they haven't seen the better side of you, of course they can tell you you're bad, because they're comparing with something else they've seen. So it doesn't hurt you. Why? You're not grasping to the so-called bad that doesn't really truly exist. It's only relatively he's correct. You can say, oh, relatively you're correct. Means you're relatively they're wrong. See, interpretive means relatively they're wrong. Ultimately, you could be good to one, a bad to another. Whose view is correct? It's a relative to who? As far as his experience goes, you're good. As far as their experience goes, you're bad. So when you see both of them are relatively right, you're not falling into extremes. You don't suffer attachment to bad, aversion to bad, attachment to good. So because even good and bad are only relatives. Ultimately, who knows? You have to realize emptiness. Until then, you will always be in a relative level. Yeah.
Is there a good way to understand the use of the word exists? Like, how do you think we should best understand when the word exists is used? How should we understand?
It's coming. It's coming. I think next verse. Something exists when you impute. Imputation and if to call this book that exists, we have to impute this as book. We have to label this as book. If we didn't have a label, that a thing do not exist. Things comes to existence only by label. When they go and astronomers look at it, first they look. They can see something, but they don't know how to distinguish from this to that. So they first mark by 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. Then slowly they get to give better names. And so when they imputed something, labeling, then that existence comes from labeling. Of course, it's conception. You have to conceive. This is book, not table, and so the book and table are differently conceived. But even if we see that we see two things differently. But if we don't have a label, we could not distinguish the table from the book. You can't say, please bring the book on the table. You can say, please bring the table. Because you can't see the book. If you thought the book was part of the table. But when you know, you can say, please bring the book on the table. They say, which book? That means there are more than one book. But there is a cup and a book and a watch. They wouldn't say, please bring the yellow book. Because there's no yellow book. They will only say yellow book if there's a red or blue or another one, yeah, different color. So it's a relative to what other colors there are. You can say yellow. If there's only one book, you don't have to say they bring the yellow book. The definite article shouldn't be used. The label, definite article should the yellow book. So without label makes it existence established, relatively speaking, at least to distinguish yellow from red. So if I say, please bring the yellow book, you can say, oh, maybe the yellow book exists somewhere in the room. Isn't it? But even if I say, please bring the yellow book to you, unless you have previously know what is yellow and what is book, you would not be able to find the book. So it's not just because I invented term that it exists. It doesn't exist. You have to be conceptually formulated, influenced by the world of convention. So if you haven't seen a book and that is yellow, you wouldn't know what to bring. Say, if you go to the North Pole or something, all the Eskimos have many names for various snows, and if they tell us something is one variety of snow, we don't know which is which. Yeah. Why? It's not because to them it doesn't exist, but to us it doesn't exist. Yeah. We don't know which snow is which. Why? We haven't conceptualized it and have not we have not subscribed to the concepts and view. Like you wouldn't know Buddhism unless you know some concepts and theories, labels and ideas. Then you know these are that theory exists. Yeah, that theory. So the existence is made possible by label, and the label also doesn't mean you label and something becomes. You have to have something to label too. So the label is dependent on existence of something that exists as something, but thing itself doesn't exist without the label. Even if you label, the labeling does not make something existence. It only does only half of it. If there is no book, I cannot say there is a yellow book. But even there is a yellow book, if I haven't got a concept, I don't know what book. What book, So that shows these are three natures called it's coming up. 3 natures called imputation, dependent, and they call complete realization. So what are the things? This is dependent in society that calls a book, isn't it? So society, it depends. Everybody knows this is a book because you know that you all depend on the knowledge that is called book, isn't it? If nobody have knowledge about book, I cannot prove that this is a book even to you. Why? Because you haven't got prior knowledge that is a book. So you are all dependent on the concept of the book. And so then us giving the label to the book, label to it, which are then yellow or new or old or mine, all these things make sense because it's got a reference point. So the existence is concept. You have to conceive it. If you haven't conception that people shares, and then you can't bring a thing and ask them to say what they think. If they have a prior concept, they say it's a book. Not because they see a book right away. They have a prior knowledge, subsequent cognizing, oh, that's a book. That's not a rabbit. So the existence of book is conceived beforehand. And the thing itself is the basis, and the concept is label. When the label and concept are recognized, then it is existent. It is existent. Say, if you lost your mother 20 years ago, and you believe she's completely disappeared or passed away. Yeah? And you don't believe you will meet her again. But you have a clear memory of what your mother looks like, and voice recognition and form and everything like that. So the other people who know your mother lost or something like that, they cannot recognize your mother. Why? Even if they're talking to her. Even they're talking to her, they don't recognize your mother. But those who have met her, know her, and she has been disappeared or something, they will straight away recognize. Why? Because they have seen her before, and they are looking for her, and they will find. When do you find an object? When you know that you have lost. People say, I found an object only when they have lost it. Otherwise, they don't say, oh, I found my book here, I found my cup here. They don't say that. Only when they think they lost it. But some people don't say, I lost my key. But he's looking for the key, and he realizes he's only looked a few places he can't find. Then he says he's lost it. It's right beside him. So he didn't lose the key. But he just had this wanting the key straight away when he wanted, and he couldn't find, he called lost. But actually the key is not lost. It's there. See, the lost is a mere label without any existence of loss. So the key being not in his hand is not lost. Key being not, his mind not being knowing where the key is lost. So key is not lost. His thought is lost. So things are relative to that. So going back to where we are. The final thing we have to understand is when addressing interpretive meaning truth is that there's no difference with regard to the meaning of definite truth. Interpretive has two meanings. One is those things that exist in conventional truth, but not in ultimate truth. Those things can also be called interpretive. Some things do not exist in conventional truth, only in the incorrect conventional truths, such as true existence of a self, or as a generality as accepted by Sankhya school. Now, true existence of self does not exist even in the conventional truth. It is a theory of concept imputed by a wrong mind consciousness of heretics. It is incorrect conventional truth. When a thing is incorrect conventional truth, it does not exist even in the nominal truth. Things such as true existence of a self do not exist even in a conventional truth, but they are said to be present in some scriptures. This is another form of interpretive meaning. Interpretive meaning can be applied to things that exist in conventional truth but not in ultimate truth, or to things that do not exist in a conventional truth but are said to exist in some teachings. In this case, the mention of the store consciousness and so on should be considered as the first kind of interpretive meaning, because they do not exist in ultimate truth, nor that they do not exist at all. When we say that the meaning of the store consciousness is interpretive, it doesn't mean that the existence of store consciousness should be completely negated, because otherwise it wouldn't serve the interpretive meaning. The meaning is that there is no true existence of store consciousness. So the store consciousness is only true for the mind-only school. But in the Madhumita mind-only school, there is no ultimately existing store consciousness. Between the self and aggregate, only aggregate exists. Yeah, only aggregate exists, because aggregate can be seen. Aggregate can be seen, and when what is seen is labeled, and then it's realized as aggregate. This proposition that aggregate alone exists is not true even in the conventional truth. In conventional truth, self exists. Generally, we distinguish between Buddhist and non-Buddhist schools on the basis of belief in the existence or non-existence of Atma or self. So Atma is the soul or self that between Buddhist and non-Buddhist Indian religions argue. In the other Indian religious traditions argue the Atma as a soul, permanent. And some people therefore mistakenly think the store consciousness is Atma. Atma. So this is why it's talking about. One distinction people between Buddhist and non-Buddhist school is taking refuge or not with respect to the method practice. Another is as far as viewpoint is concerned, whether one accepts selflessness or not. So method is refuge in the refuge or no refuge. And view is whether Buddhist view is there is no inherent existence of self. This is just a general distinction. Otherwise, it is said that there are some Buddhist schools that do not accept selflessness, that is, who do not negate the self completely. These are some lower schools. Yeah, it will be mentioned later that there is one section of the Vaiveshika school. Vaiveshika Sut is one of the 18 Nikaya schools in the Theravada tradition, specifically Vastiputra school, which believes in the existence of inexpressible self. So they think there is an inexpressible self. Other than that, we talk about the acceptance or non-acceptance of a self. Other Buddhist schools believe the aggregates do not exist. Some say that they exist in conventional truth. Others that they exist also in ultimate truth. In conventional truth, they say aggregate exists, but self does not exist. So that's in the conventional truth. This aggregate exists, which we misapprehended as self. But by the time you take away all the aggregate, you couldn't find the self. By the time you dissect your body, you have only body pieces, but there's no self. Even with operation, you can't find self. They're only operating lungs and livers and that, but they're not operating on a self. Self doesn't say, "Don't touch me." There's not a single little place that has self exists. We can't touch it. Even heart is not self. The Vaiveshika and so on accept this. The difference between the existence of aggregates and the existence of self. Madhumita believes that both are equally existing in conventional truth, equally non-existing ultimate truth. Now that is a very important point. So that the Madhumita school does not deny the relative existence of everything. When the relative existence of everything is true, is accepted, we don't have argument in relative truth. If you see something high, it's true to you. If I see something low, it's true to me. But it's only relative to something. It is high or low, but itself is not independent high. In the Mount Everest is only high, only in this world, but not highest mountain in the universe. And so right now our universe is just very limited in this one. And all things are dependently arising. So main thing when we say emptiness, meaning everything is dependent. When we don't think it's dependent, we think it's independently long, independently real, independently beautiful, independently new. No, it's only dependent. The tall is tall only when a short is next to it. So there's a tallness established by not it by itself by having a short one next to it, isn't it? So therefore, it's not independently tall, isn't it? You can't say this is short to me unless you have a long leg. It's only for a long leg the sock is too short, but that otherwise that sock might be quite long to a little feet. So they said, "What size do you wear?" People say, "You should say, I wear 5'9". Because that's your height, when you say, "What size you wear?" you should say, "What? What me?" So that would put them on the spot. Then said, "These socks." "Oh, your socks. I don't know socks I wear. I don't wear socks. My feet wear socks." Very good. You wear socks, you got to put on the nose or something, See, it's only relative, isn't it? See, that clarifies. There's no you that put on the socks. The feet put socks. So, what if you put the socks on the eyes? That would be good. And the speck on the eyes, speck on the feet. Even speck is not speck on the feet. Speck is only speck on the eyes that needs it. See, that's how you slowly eliminate the misunderstanding. That's the interpretive meaning, yeah? That's the interpretive meaning. Oh, so you can't, if somebody says you're chicken brain, you can't take it too literally. "Oh, you're relatively true." You can say, "Oh, you're relatively true." Where's the chicken brain? because his word is contradictory. He say you're chicken and you got a brain. Your head is bigger than the chicken. So what he's saying is completely internally contradictory. So why you take the literally what they say is anything hurtful? Why? If you're grasping to you, "I'm not chicken brain," then it really upsets you. But otherwise, what he said is internally contradictory. It's got no sense. See? This is how you don't get hurt. If you have no grasping to the eye. So this is what happens when you study middle way. You're just free from misery. because there's no you. There's no you that is so vulnerable to get hurt by remarks. Because what you hear is just a sound, just phonemes. Sounds, the vowels and consonants. Chicken brain. If the word chicken brain is said in slow motion, you wouldn't hear anything. Chicken brain. It might be so musical. Might even be musical. So that's why when we see movie, it's only moving still photos. It looks like real. But there is nobody in the screen. We just think they are real or something. All our life is like that. It's all manipulated, all exaggerated. And that's why we lose our sensibility. So middle way is seeing clearly what actually is, what is merely labeled, what is wrongly conceived. What is merely labeled and wrongly conceived as something else. All misperceptions. Yeah, so, yeah. Madhumita negate this, proceeding to demonstrate the complete absence of any solid thing, thus establishing emptiness, yeah? It is not denying existence of something, but it is denying existence of what you think it is. Yeah. The point is that these are accepted as equally true existence. If a teaching says that self does not exist and that only exists, aggregate only exists, this is definitely interpretive, and it is not even accepted as conventional truth, because in conventional truth we have to accept the existence of both self and aggregates, not the proposition that aggregate alone exists. All these things are interpretive, not definitive. This is because they don't exist. Store consciousness does not exist in ultimate truth. Buddha mentioned these topics from the standpoint of relative truth. What is being negated here is the ultimate existence of store consciousness. In other words, there is no contradiction. So what the middle way view is that ultimately there is no so-called store consciousness that independently exists. Only on a relative truth, Buddha said it exists for the sake of an interpretive meaning. With this, we have now dealt with the benefits of having karmic effect. The second one, in presenting two benefits of this negation, meaning negation of production from other. Now, this is refuting that the things produced from other, independent of everything. So this third is refuting the mind-only doctrine. This is the Chitta Matrin. Chitta means mind. Matrin means only, mind only, because they think there is. Now this is more coming to the mind-only mind. How now we're going to understand what the mind-only school's standpoint is that need to be refuting mind-only doctrine as support to the base thesis of the production from other, because some people uses the mind-only school as a thesis to authenticate the independent production from other. So that's the main point of this exercise. This has two subdivisions. First is repeating others' theory. Those people who use this theory of other production, we have to know what their thesis is before we counter-argue it. And second is describing reasonings to oppose it. Then we can refute if you know what their wrong thesis or assertion is. The first has three subdivisions. The first is ultimate mode of existence is realized as mind only. They say ultimate mode of existence is mind only. They think there's nothing but mind. This is problematic from the mind only school. General Buddhist point of view, people say it's all in the mind. They think that's a damn Buddhist view. They think you are safe because everything is in the mind. But they don't realize that's only as good as mind only school gets, but not as good as middle way should get. They don't know that. And quite a lot of people are satisfactorily happy that everything is your mind, and they try to change the mind. But here it is a bit more complicated than that. It's not really delightful to refute the wrong views of the other schools, because this is so shallow. It's not really satisfactory. But within the internal Buddhist schools that present curly views, it's really good to refute that, because so this mind-only school is one of them here. The first of these has three subdivisions. The first is ultimate mode of existence realized in mind only. So that's one. Second is grasping, and grasp arise from the mind only. So that's again only the mind grasping. So the grasped is mind only. Grasping is only mind only. So that's the mind only school's second view. Third is presenting the definition of mind only. You have to know firstly what is the definition of mind only. So this is really all about understanding what mind-only doctrine is. The first is the ultimate mode of existence realized as mind-only is explained in this verse. So when Chandrakirti writes a verse like this, that's not his view. This is the view of the mind-only school, what they think it is. So first we have to think of that, and then only we look at from his argument. Zungwa mepen zimba matonshin sesum namshi zabdu rab tobe sherab lane chanju sembade namshi zamdu teni topar gyur so. finding no perceiving subject and nothing perceived, and understanding that the triple world is merely consciousness, the Bodhisattva, you affirm, abide in wisdom, knowing that mind alone is ultimate reality. So this is the mind-only school. So this is repeating others' theory, meaning others' theory is mind-only school theory, and we know we are touching on the doctrine of the mind-only school. Text now discusses the actual doctrine of the mind-only school. Earlier, when we are negating the existence of production from other, we were negating the position held by all those Buddhist schools who believe there is production from other from the Vaibhashika and Sautantrika school. We didn't talk about the mind-only school point of view, not the mind-only school in particular, but it is the mind-only school that raises the strongest points. Yeah, so we have to understand the strongest points, and the theories of other school have been addressed in other texts, so we don't have to go over there. So here is specifically the mind-only school we will deal with. The doctrine of mind-only school is presented here in the context of negating production from other. This is because it is their doctrine that is used to try to prove production from other. First of all, the mind-only or Yogacara school tries to explain how a bodhisattva on the sixth bhumi realizes ultimate nature. From the Madhumita point of view, it was already explained how bodhisattva on the sixth bhumi realized emptiness. The earlier explanation revealed that the bodhisattva realized emptiness of all phenomena, not just of a certain phenomena. Yeah, we have already covered how bodhisattva realized emptiness of all phenomena, not just mind. In order to oppose this, the mind-only school says that bodhisattva on the sixth bhumi, or sixth bodhisattva abiding in wisdom, which means the same thing, realized ultimate nature of all things in the form of mind alone. So for them, that realization itself is the mind. There's a lot of grain of truth in there. Not in this form of emptiness. So they don't think it's emptiness. They think it's mind that you're realizing. According to this reason, the bodhisattva on this level finds that there is no observed or grasped object. This is a very, very wonderful way of looking at it. They're not observing something. No object is observed. Then there's no grasp object. Then, of course, there's no mind to grasp the object. Now, so this is the argument. Neither the grasping nor the grasp are present. That which is free from both of these is the mere consciousness, non-dual mind. So that's their argument, yeah? Quite a lot of people relate to that, and they are not uncomfortable with it. They're very comfortable with that. Lot of early Indian masters, a lot of Chinese Buddhist scholars, and many Indian Tibetan masters, all also, if they can realize this level of mind-only school, it's quite liberating. But it has its own slight, subtle kind of problem. The non-dual mind is the actual nature of all phenomena. It is only thing that exists in reality. Therefore, according to Yogacara, this is the mind only, the bodhisattva on the sixth bhumi will understand the nature of all phenomena as non-dual mind. So it's not the mind and the phenomena. There is no thing to grasp anything other than the mind. So the mind and the grasp are non-dual, So only thing that seems to really matter is consciousness, consciousness. This is a very strong point, It's no point we think they are wrong without knowing why they're wrong. First we have to see almost their thesis seems so convincingly correct. and then it's useful. This is the same as saying that the ultimate truth of all phenomena and that which is realized by the Bodhisattva sixth bhumi can come to the same thing. It is realized in the form of mind only. This shows the theory of mind. This shows the theory of mind only school. And they even say, now rest on that mind. They say meditate on it. Now just watch that mind. It's not the form, not the color, not the deity, not the object. You just try to almost like inexpressibly non-dual, the mind and what you are seeing. And often in the meditation they say, now hold that state of just being luminous consciousness. It's not cup, not you, but just consciousness. And that very, very lofty in the sense, very, very meditators witness this realization, not philosophically choosing one from the other. They can't help but the mind only. They realize that the mind is not yellow, red, blue, male, female, old, young, not that. So it transcends all of those conventional fixations and label. But yet the mind only, the awareness, the cognition of the mindness of it's undeniably there. Yeah, so that's why it's a very, very meditative view. This mind only school is not a theoretical school. It's a very meditative school, realization. Realization that has a lot of soft spot in many practitioners. This shows the theory mind school, the theory of the mind school, mindfulness school. Let's read those next two verses quickly. The second is describing reason to oppose it. Now, point is, what's the need to oppose it? Isn't that fine? They say, yes, we have to describing reasoning why we have to oppose it. The first part is ultimate mode of existence realized as mind only. Yeah. Second is grasping and grasp arise from mind only. This was explained one by one verse. Chidalungi kube gyatsun chele chulap jungwa deshindu kunji sama kunshi shechawa rangi nube namji zamshin jung. Just from the mighty sea, you say, the waves appear, called forth by blowing winds. Likewise, from the seed of all is the alaya vidana, the universal ground. Mere consciousness arises through its own potential. Just as the mighty sea, you say, the waves appear called forth by blowing winds. Likewise, from the seed of all, the alaya, vijnana, the universal ground, mere consciousness arises through its own potential. This seems to explain that there are two types of consciousness. One that arises from the store consciousness, other that is the store consciousness. So this is, yeah. So that's how they present. Now they're showing the loophole. This doesn't mean that mind-only school believe in the existence of two types of consciousness, yeah. But the assertion here does, because ocean and its waves are not one thing. It's two things. The point is that which is accepted by mind-only school as alive Vina, as store consciousness, and according to this school, all other forms of consciousness arise from this. In other words, the grasping and the grasp arise from the mind alone. What exists truly in the store consciousness, and that is like the mighty sea. When it is stirred by wind, waves arise by waves is meant the grasp and the grasping. Mere consciousness arise, mere consciousness means that only the consciousness arise, no objects. First, we have this store consciousness, the mighty sea, that is the basis of all, and out of that arises waves, which are the grasping and grasp in the form of consciousness. This concludes the grasping and the grasp arise from the mind only. So it's both arise from the mind only, yeah? So they are grasping and grasped. Both arise from the mind. So that is showing that. The third one is presenting the definition of the mind only. This is explained. Tedara shenji wangi ngowoka ngobo takpari yobe gyurgyurshin shiro sungwa meban jungyula yotan tugun yume ranshin yus. Now this is what we were talking before, how the book exists. And thus dependent nature, other powered. If we were going to give a name, it's powered by the book, yeah, powered by the thing. Or cup. We can't call a cup a book a cup. We are powered by the book to call a book. But the book is not book from its own self, but it has to be imputed. So there's is cause of things that are but imputations. The book is only exists because of the imputation, even though there are pages like that, but it's not book unless it's got a imputed label, yeah, imputed label. Now, this is real philosophy. Otherwise, we think things are things like that itself. We don't realize the history of the thing is there wasn't a book in the first place. It was invented by one time, and firstly there wasn't even a paper, and slowly books were bounded. In the old days, the books were never bounded; they were all loose leaves, and so they're called bound books. That's why. So they're labeled. So is the cause of things that are but imputations. If the book is not book by itself. Its book is because it's got a label. People imputed it. This nature is what manifests. What manifests to us is labeled on the labeling base. Labeled on the labeling base. This may not be book. This might be just empty pages. If this is not printed, we wouldn't call book. We call I don't know, pages. Book, usually we assume it to be printed, isn't it? Yeah. It's nature that which manifests. There are no things outside the mind. Yeah. There are no things outside the mind. It's our opinion, our label, our thought conceived and labeled to the thing as a book, and especially called my book. When you think it's my book, then the book really looks like mine. When you call his book, the book looks like not mine. Book itself got no independence. No independence to sit there as nothing. It is completely dictated by what I think it is, and what I think it is not. So that shows the book is totally dependent on the label, or grasping, or lack of it. How do you know something is abandoned or something is given? People leave the second-hand furniture on the nature strip, but most people who come to Australia, they don't know, please help yourself. They say, why? What they are sunning it or what? They're airing the couch on the nature strip or what? They would never think of touching someone else's furniture until they put a notice, please help yourself, please take this away or something. It's like that, because the furniture doesn't say, I'm not wanted, please take me. Furniture doesn't say that. So you have to know, It's like that. When I first went to New Zealand, you know what somebody said? I will invite you for tea, I said, what time? 6:30. I thought, tea is very late, 6:30. So I had dinner 5 o'clock and then went 6:30. And the tea is dinner. I didn't think it was dinner. I thought it was tea. Because they said tea. See, I'm not conceptually informed to know tea is dinner. Because tea is tea, dinner is dinner. Some people say lunch also dinner. Come for dinner. It's lunchtime. See, these are how things are just merely labeled. Thing itself got no true existence, yeah?
So does that mean that they might say that a newborn baby doesn't have a mind?
No, he's got a mind, yeah. But baby is very innocent. He put his hand in the poo and eats like this. Why? Because he doesn't know which is which. He hasn't been taught to distinguish, isn't it? When slowly he knows, Baby doesn't know because that's what the high chair is all about. His high chair is not high chair. His high chair is for the parent. For him, it's all his plate. All high chair is fork is here, knife is here, the whole kitchen. Baby's like this. He put some food over here. He still thinks he's eating it. He doesn't know where his mouth. More goes on his face than on in his mouth. It's very, very. That's why when you put a dummy in the mouth, he thinks he's the mother's breast. 2 hours he was just sucking dummy as mother's breast. Why? Nobody told it's a dummy. See? See, things are just merely believing what it is. Then it appears as such. It's conventionally true for the baby. Mothers know. Not only they know how to make dummies, but they make dummies that has some mango taste or some milk tasting or some little flavors in the taste. So that it's not just rubber, but it's rubber that's got a small flavor, and the baby thinks they're getting a really multi-flavored breast. See, things are only relative. Things exist from that point of view. So next is so the nature is this nature is what it manifests. There are no things outside the mind. Yeah, there's really nothing in outside the mind that is the thing. What mind thinks it is, it is. This is mind only school. If you think something is what it is, it's not what the thing is. It's what you think is. So that's mind only got a lot of followers. Arguably, I'm quite a follower of them. I don't know whether I'm really Madhumita follower or not. That does not indeed exist. Yeah, this does not indeed exist, but lies beyond the sphere of intellect. Whereas the Madhumita speaks a lot about the true truth. The main classification used by mind-only school is the three characteristics or three natures. That's very important. The first is kuntak, which means imputed phenomena, the labeling, okay, just called label. The second is xianwang. Xianwang is other power, means dependent. Yeah, is it for me to call this book? It depends whether there got something causes conditions for me to call. I wouldn't call this my hat, for instance. Well, I can if it's not dependent. It's independently hat. I can call it hat, but it's not. There is no hat in this book. But there are pages and so on. There's a lot of relative factors. So, xianwang or dependent means something that is dependent on other or under the power of others. Yeah. I'm under the power of what these things are, and I cannot just make up as I go. So, conventional world says that's a book. That's not a hat. So I'm minority. Everybody says it's a book, and why? Because they have all been conceptualized as a book, book, and so I have to. Therefore, that's why they say, when in Rome, act as Romans, even though you're not. So the third one is called accomplishment, Yongrup. So the label is there, the book is there. We all agree. That's accomplishment. That's what a thing exists. Yeah, you're talking about what exists. The existence is that all the thing causes a condition that the relative world says a book is book, and I have a label. We have a label. We have a commonly shared label, and then a thing exists. If you and I want a book, but there is no book, there are some loose pages, then we wouldn't realize there's no accomplishment to find a book, but we will find loose pages. So we still have accomplishment to find loose pages. Yeah? Loose pages. So loose pages, we both agree there are loose pages, but there is no book. But to have a book, not only we should agree, but there should be a relatively dependently existing book, and that everybody undisputedly agrees. So therefore, there is an existence of a book. So that's your question before, as I say, is coming. The mind-only school explain all phenomena on the basis of these three natures. This is very useful. This actually goes to help, in the long run, how everything is dependently arising. So it is not independently arising. Independently doesn't arise. Here we will deal with the second, with the xianwang, the other power. Out of the three things in the first category, imputed phenomena do not exist at all. Why? If you just merely impute something, it doesn't exist unless there's other factors. Yeah. So you can't just impute whatever. I can pick a flower in the sky. I can say there's a flower, but they say, where is this now? We can't see a flower. So it's not just you make up as you go. There should be some other factors, dependent factors, dependent factors. Yeah. So the second Xianwang, the second Xianwang, the third Yongdrup, that are accomplished do exist. These are three things that depend on each other. In other words, according to mind-only school, two of these things exist, one does not. With regard to the second Xianwang, it is explained that this thing called other powered entity, or Xianwang, means there must be existence to act as the cause of all imputed things. Yeah, so you can't impute unless there's an imputable thing. Yeah, you couldn't put a signboard unless there's a sign. You couldn't put a signboard without a sign. You see, so therefore you have to have a. If you have a label called plum jam label, there's a little. You have to put the plum jam on a bottle or something. You can't put it on a nose and then think it's a plum jam. The labeling base has to be at least a bottle, even if it's empty one. So if I put the plum jam label on the bottle, even though there is no plum jam yet, it almost becomes plum jam bottle. It is a plum jam bottle. There's no plum jam in yet. But unless the plum jam is labeled, you don't know it's plum jam, isn't it? You can see them. Some people bring in a plate couple of little sort of spreads. You never know which is which. And you go to five-star hotel breakfast, those big breakfasts. You go there, they label everything. Otherwise, you don't know what is what. This is all there. They really look like food, but without name, you don't want to serve at all. You never know what you're going to serve. Chicken brain or something, So everything's labeled. Then you think, this is I like. Why? The label exists. But just because there's a label, they wouldn't scoop the label. They have to have something behind it. The food actually exists. If the label is food, then just eat the label. See the label don't truly exist unless it is other powered, which is the thing itself. But even thing itself doesn't exist unless it has a label. Even the plum jam exists, the plum jam label exists, but the person coming using the spread ignores the plum jam. He only takes the tahini or peanut butter or some modern kind of things people use. And maybe vegan people use those things. Vegan people don't want to touch some things. For them, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Please take them away. Yeah. They want to see something that doesn't exist to exist. They say, what's on the menu? But there's not enough variety. I'm a vegan. Yeah. All the other things not existing. It's amazing how this is what looking at how label and dependent and accomplishment. These three natures. These three natures very important here. When we come to investigate what is this other powered entity, we will discover that it is store consciousness. The mind-only school accept that. Mind-only school also accept the emptiness of all imputed phenomena, which usually refers to external objects. Not emptiness of store consciousness, but because store consciousness is not empty. So that's the weakness of them. They don't argue the independent and label, but they still think the store consciousness exists. Yeah, to prove that the other power entity or store consciousness should be accepted as the basis of all imputed things is the part of accomplishment. The third one. That's what they say. Without the basis, the imputed things will not arise. This is the reason for the existence of other power entity. The two lines show the reason. The next two lines show the characteristic of the other powered entity, that there are three. The first is that it arises without external objects. Second is that it exists. And the third is it has the nature of not being an object of any elaboration. Unlike the other grasping that arises as a result of external object, this other powered entity does not arise in dependence of external object. Mind-only school describes the two types of consciousness. One is store consciousness or other powered entity, or non-dual mind. These exist truly without depending on external objects. Now that's the highest, most important point. The other two types of consciousness, such as ear consciousness or eye consciousness, that are specifically related to objects, are the only independence on external object. Yeah. So they say for the eye consciousness depend form, ear consciousness depend sound, but for the store consciousness doesn't depend on anything. There's a lot of thinking going on there. Lots of thinking going on. When external objects are negated, such as form and sound for the ear and nose consciousness, naturally these consciousnesses are negated. All the six sense consciousness that Buddha said there is no eye, there's no form, no sound, no smell, and so on, the mind-only school got no problem. They only got a problem when there's no mental consciousness. They say, what? They say, who says that? Who hears that? I didn't say nothing. They're talking about who said it, because they are the one who's making an object here. They thought it was only mind only. And when we say mental consciousness, they say, oh, I told you that one exists. How can you relate to that? Because you rely on me now. You thought there was an independent consciousness. Independent consciousness doesn't need to exist me to say no mental consciousness, and then you get offended. Your true existence shouldn't be troubled by me saying there's no mental consciousness. If the mental consciousness truly exists, shouldn't depend on me stating it, because you said no, you don't depend on anything else. Can you get it? Yeah. So this is how you think. So these consciousnesses do not exist from their point of view. This brings us to the main area of the philosophy of mind-only school. Sorry, we're going a little bit over time, but it's no overtime. Think like that. Air time's finished, but mind time not finished. When they say the only mind exists, it doesn't mean all types of consciousness. It is only the non-dual or other powered entity or straw consciousness that is accepted as truly exists. It arises without external object. The Madhumita philosophy used the mind-only school's own reasoning against its contention. Yeah, good. The mind-only school seems to be saying that there's some truly existing basis without which all things could not be explained. It says that straw consciousness arises without depending on external object, which is now showing their weakness. Yeah. Madhumita uses the same reasoning to ask, how can you prove the existence of straw consciousness without depending on external objects? That's exactly. Yeah. If you can prove this, then in the same way we can also prove the existence of external objects. So you can't say mind only. You can say external object only. Because this material world says objective view, objective view, objective view. They never say subjective view. Because they think that things are determined the existence of the object. Now, the mind only says only subjective. So, the middle way school sees the faults of both. You can't have both ways. You have to establish existence of mind only without depending on external object. If you have to authenticate the lack of inherent existence of I consciousness because of not depending on form, okay, that's fine. How do you establish existence of mind only without non-mind only? You can't. This is the kind of how can you prove the existence of straw consciousness without depending on external object? If you can prove this, then the same way we can also prove the existence of external object. There's no need of any basis, just as you do not have any basis of your straw consciousness. Mind-only school maintains that the straw consciousness arises without external object, unlike other grasping, and that it therefore exists. It's very, 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 very contentious view, The Madhumita replies, one might think that if this is the case, you would have some characteristic of this particular thing you're talking about, but maybe it doesn't exist. You may have something to talk about it, but maybe it doesn't exist. Because we have found out all the other things too, We first thought it had got a few things to talk about, but by the time we disaggregate all the aggregates, We couldn't find anything in anything. In order to counter this Madhumita argument, mind-only school maintains that store consciousness exists, that it has the nature of being not being an object of elaboration. Yeah, it cannot be perceived. It cannot be perceived. This is now they're going in a contradiction. This means that it is not an object of conceptual elaboration. So they're saying the mind is not an object of conceptual elaboration. All other things, external object, other grasping, are objects of conceptual elaboration. This means they are subject to conceptual thought or analysis. On the other hand, this other power entity is not subject to conceptual analysis. It cannot be apprehended by conceptual thought. Now, so your mind cannot be apprehended by conceptual thought. Conceptual thought. It is said that to be realized by the Bodhisattva on the sixth bhumi. Conceptual thought cannot reach it. Thus, it is not the object of any elaboration. The Tibetan word turpa, translated as beyond the sphere of intellect, it is sometimes translated as conceptualization, conceptual thought, or conceptual elaboration. They have no access to this other power entity. These are the three characteristics of the other power entity. That is the definition used by the mind-only school. With this, the theory of the mind school is presented as part of the others' theory. So we have only established what their views are. We haven't argued. We have just asserted what their mind-only school view is. So have a read over the next few days, and then we come to it, the counter-argument next week. Thank you.